to another video in making sense of multiple sclerosis, and today I'm going to be talking about diet in MS. So if you're anything like me, when you were first diagnosed, you probably researched every diet and every available alternative therapy, supplementary therapy, complementary therapy, so many different things out there. And a lot of them are very much anecdotal, evidence-based, which isn't always great, i.e. they're from people's own experiences and personal testimonies of, well, it worked for me. And that posed a lot of problems for me from a research standpoint, in my own research and in the research through the skills I've acquired, in studying psychology. It made me ask more deeper questions and really look at the foundations of research. Now, I'm acutely aware that this is suddenly sounding really boring, so I'm going to try and keep it less scientific, but scientific enough. So diet has always kind of been a revolutionary concept in coping with and potentially treating multiple sclerosis. People see all these things advertised all the time, and it's usually to do with anti-inflammatory based eating, and they all look fabulous. And today I wanted to talk about what is the real deal with it. And I want to look at it without a pharmaceutical head-on and without being an alternative therapy head-on. I want to look at it from someone who's entirely unbiased and objective, and for the most part I am. So if you haven't heard of these diets, they are based around eating anti-inflammatory food groups. So the biggest thing would be fruit, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, low salt, low sugar, no processed food. And each MS diet variation has slight differences in what they allow and don't allow. Some are exceptionally strict and very hard to live by. Depending on your current eating habits. Others are very lifestyle friendly if you're open-minded and able to make some reasonable kind of adaptations to your everyday eating. I personally come from a background of high sugar. I didn't eat a lot of saturated fats or very fatty foods. I did eat veg, I did eat fruit, I loved all of that, still do, but my big killer is sugar. When I look back, especially pre-MS, the amount of sugar that I was consuming a day, on average, I was consuming probably 4 to 5 chocolate bar equivalents a day, and that was down to a busy lifestyle, running from meeting to meeting, appointment to appointment, and just whatever I could grab that was convenient. And a lot of the times at petrol gas stations I would grab chocolate bar, or I would grab something that would be quick to eat, give me some energy and get through the rest of the day. Between that and caffeine, that's how I survived. That probably was a contributing factor, a very poor diet. So from that perspective, I am was very guilty of sugar, and I still am at times. I'm going to admit that right now. I am a chocolate fiend. Wow! So this whole revolutionary diet thing came around the 1940s, and the first person to kind of instate it, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but from the research I have done, was a chap called Dr. Roy Swank, and he based all of his evidence around how these foods had anti-inflammatory properties, and eating them and sticking to that diet would either slow or completely halt the progression of multiple sclerosis. And that was done back in the 1940s, so that was really early on, back before we had many of the immunomodulating drugs that we have now. And it was another attempt at taking the anecdotal evidence, which, to be fair, any clinical trial, any piece of research is usually founded upon anecdotal evidence. When enough people in a community and society say this works for me, it then goes into scientific research and they look at how that actually breaks down and why it could potentially be working. And then it's then progressed on to the next stage. So after that, there was a lady, Terry Wahls. Dr. Terry Wahls was diagnosed, I think it was in 2000. I would need to check that. I should really check that before I make these videos, but from memory, it was about 2000 she was diagnosed, and she based a lot of her background and her understanding and her knowledge alongside her diagnosis to formulate the same principle: anti-inflammatory foods, healthier lifestyle, low fat, low sugar, low salt, and really analysing that and how that affects the body from a scientific level. So that's always helpful as well. It's hard in the scientific community to get a credible backing from anyone to research something if it doesn't come from someone who is what they deem to be credible. So if you're just Joe Public, like most of us, they go, so drinking your granny's green tea with a sock dipped in it and a peg mixed around in it, that worked for you? That's good. They want to actually hear from somebody who appears to be credible. And so that certainly helped the ball rolling towards a better understanding of how that diet affects us when we have MS. All of this kind of stuff, to me, it makes sense that if MS is an inflammatory disease, then of course foods that are anti-inflammatory should, in essence, intuitively, we would assume that would work and that would help. But does it? So I want to look at this again with an open mind. I am not a fan of Big Pharma, but I am not a fan of all-out MS diet. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm not telling you to do this. I'm not telling you what you should and shouldn't believe. I think this video is going to do one of three things. It's either going to exceptionally annoy some people, it's either going to inspire some other people, or it's going to get you to think regardless of what side of the fence you sit on. And I'm hoping that regardless of what side you're on, it's going to make you think anyway. So at the risk of sounding like I'm back on my high school debate team, there are a couple of things to look at from both sides. So if we were to look at diet as a treatment for multiple sclerosis, as a treatment to help ease symptoms and perhaps halt or at least slow the progression of multiple sclerosis. Now here's my personal opinion, but I'm going to discuss all the options. My personal opinion, and YouTube is full of those, is that diet cannot and will not be the singular answer for everyone. And the reason I say that is because there are different types of MS. And in all my videos, for those of you watching who are not MSers, there are different types of MS. And with each type, there are different rates of progression, i.e. how fast someone might deteriorate. And there are different types of aggression. So it could be that you have a very slow progressing MS, but it's particularly aggressive. So when you do progress, it's debilitating. You might have a very fast progressing and aggressive MS, which is what I was initially diagnosed with. I've said it umpteen times, but in the space of 2 weeks with no prior symptoms in my life, I went from being fully bodily abled, working full-time, a mum, mucking out horses and being active and jumping and riding. And within 2 weeks, I was completely paralysed from the chest down and blind. In 2 weeks. Now, MS doesn't typically behave that way. You normally have a gradual onset, or you might have an initial clinically isolated incident that will then progress to a relapse, what we call a relapse, and then it slowly progresses. But if you are or were unlucky like me, and I found out quite a few people, and people have messaged and commented to say, you know, your story is so similar to mine, and it makes me feel good to know that I'm not the only weirdo. But it's also good to know that there are other people who have experienced what I have and get something out of these videos. So within those 2 weeks, I was completely incapacitated. I was catheterized, nappy, had to be changed, washed. I couldn't see. I couldn't do my usual social media and sit on my phone. I just couldn't do anything. And I was really scared because without knowing anything about MS, I thought I was dying. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was happening to my body. Now, I had a friend who came to me once, and it was during this time, and she said to me, and I know, oh my gosh, I know so many of us have had this, and it frustrates the life out of you, and it can be the most well-meaning thing ever. But people come to you when you have MS and say, have you tried the green tea diet? Have you tried exercising upside down? Oh, my friend's granny has MS and she's 92 now and she swears by bananas. Those things are all meant to be helpful, but bear in mind when you say that to someone with MS, we've heard that 20,000 times from someone else, and we've been to neurologists and umpteen types of therapists and consultants, and if it was just solved by bananas, we probably would have had a few by now and be fine. So it's just thinking carefully, and on the other side, as an MSer, when you hear that, don't fight every fire that you get, just go, thanks for that, that's great. So I had a friend who came to me and said, I want you to try and look at this book. And it was something, I think I want to say it was Foods That Harm, Foods That Heal, or something like that. And it was really helpful. It was really nice to know the type of food groups and the certain things within those food groups that are particularly harmful and not helpful to the healing process. So, you know, those things were great and I really benefited from that information. However, and this is my opinion, I was going downhill so rapidly. I had something like 5 MRIs within that summer, and it was every single time it was going from 2 to 6 to 12 to the lesions were just spreading all over my brain, and it was so unusual in its presentation and how acute and aggressive it was. They were thinking, this has got to be Lyme's disease, it's got to be something else, because this, you know, there's no way that MS would progress this quickly. There's no amount of anti-inflammatory foods that I could have consumed during that time that would have helped me. It would have helped me in small ways, in terms of cardiovascular health, in terms of, you know, these well-meaning people were suggesting, and you know what, it would have helped, but it would not have stopped the disease quickly. I needed to have steroids and I needed to have a disease-modifying drug quickly to stop that. Perhaps somebody who isn't in that state and has a different type of MS, a different rate of aggression and a different onset would have been afforded the ability to start a diet that has anti-inflammatory foods and helps to slow that progression through healthy eating. It all depends on your situation and where you are, which is why if you start looking into these diets and natural things, which are great, I'm not putting them down by any means, if you can stick to that kind of thing, that's great. But if you're on a disease-modifying drug, Tysabri, Ocrevus, Gilenya, any of these drugs, I would really, really beg and urge you to proceed with caution if you're thinking about stopping them and changing your diet in place of that. There's a reason you've been put on that. And of course, Big Pharma want to make money out of you. Of course, they're going to try and make money out of the NHS, the National Health Care System in Britain. And it's the same in the US and everywhere. These companies push their product because they want to make money. Of course they do. We're not stupid. But there's a reason that organisations like the NHS and all these healthcare systems are actually buying the drug in to treat you. And the reason is there's clinical efficacy. It works. The drug works. That's why. And if it doesn't work for you, then obviously your neurologist will try different things. And I've said before, I said to a neurologist friend of mine who now resides in Spain, and I said to her, you know, if these MS diets are so good, then why isn't there more information about diet and, you know, the impact of diet amongst our healthcare providers? Why aren't they feeling the responsibility to tell us about diet? And she said to me, my own personal opinion, she said, they don't work as well as disease-modifying drugs. And she said, as a neurologist, I'm going to say that. She said, but then there are people who are doctors who absolutely, like Terry Wahls and Roy Swank, who swear by their product and their diet. But you have to carefully read the beginning of their publications and what they say. They talk about other things as well. And the publications were at the beginning, not so much Dr. Wahls, because that was the year 2000. But even in 2000, there wasn't the disease-modifying drugs they have now. And I would be so interested to speak to Dr. Wahls, or have been able to speak to Dr. Swank and say, what actually, you know, what do you think now? All I would say on that front is that every case of MS is different. And not every type of MS can be slowed, stopped, or even reversed, as some people claim, by diet. I really don't believe that. I think there's a happy medium of both. So ultimately what I'm saying is that yes, these MS diets help. They absolutely do. But their efficacy for you personally is going to vary depending on your type of MS, how aggressive it is, how fast it's progressing, and how much of medical intervention is required. If someone had told me in the time that I was going downhill so quickly in a 2-week period, try this diet and it'll change and everything will be fine, I can tell you now from the amount of neurotic reading I did and the neurotic, you know, studies that I listened to in my headphones in the hospital, I tried so hard to eat according to these food groups and according to the suggestions. And I'm sure they helped somewhere, but I needed medical intervention to stop what was going on and halt it before any permanent disability could occur. And unfortunately, it did manage to stop a lot of disability, but I still have problems with walking. I still have problems with my eyesight. If I get too hot, I go blind. I still have to be catheterized. That's life for me, and I'm a young woman, and it's not the glamorous kind of life I saw that I would have. I didn't think that I would be living like that. I had to swap high heels for slippers and flip-flops, but I'm okay with that. Diet is fabulous, but it depends on the person, their MS, and how bad things are for them. So there's another chap who's probably the most recent guy to come out with an MS diet. And you may see his documentary on, I think, Amazon or Netflix, these types of providers. And he started the MS Hope diet. And if you just Google MS Hope, his page will come up. And his name's Matthew Embry. And he portrays a very genuine and convincing argument for the use of an anti-inflammatory diet to help with the symptoms of MS and, you know, recover from MS. He believes it's possible to recover entirely from MS. He gives a very compelling story and he has a passion for what he does, and I really admire him. But I also think it's a very dangerous game to play around with these disease-modifying drugs and stop them, or, you know, come off them gradually. However, to cease the use of them and use a diet in place. If you've had to be put on these, there's a reason, and not every neurologist and healthcare provider has this ulterior motive of wanting to back big pharma so that they've still got a job. I have a friend who's a neurologist, and she's told me a lot of things. Some things have opened my eyes, and other things I kind of assumed. But she said they forget that neurologists and other healthcare providers and consultants are people too. Not all of them have no morals and want to back big pharma all the way. And it's not just always, everyone portrays it as this seedy underworld. Do not, to get me wrong, I think there are some questionable things going on in the pharmaceutical world, and it is all about money. We're not stupid. But there are some people out there who just want to make you better and want to see you do better and have a better quality of life. So yes, there are some truth and some truth in these stories, but I wouldn't totally buy into that. Because without my immunomodulating drug, I probably wouldn't be here. And that sounds like such a dramatic thing to say, but to go paralysed from the chest down and blind in 2 weeks, what would have happened? It's like anything, when you have a medication, sometimes, especially in horses, that's the only way I can think of this. In horses, we might get a special supplement, and that supplement is maybe to calm them, or perhaps to help with various health conditions, gut health, whatever. And during the time that you start this medication, this supplementary medication, it'll give you a suggestion for a loading period. So it takes 2 weeks for this to work, and in those 2 weeks you give double a dose every day so that it gets into their system. If it was the same thing, which it is in diets, you need to almost give yourself a period of time to get into that diet and for that diet to fully become effective and all these horrible toxins to leave your body. I didn't have another 2 weeks to do that, not without permanent disability. I needed an immediate intervention, and a lot of people with MS do. And sometimes when we get really well on our disease-modifying drugs and we feel healthier and we feel like we're managing to cope, we start to think, maybe I don't need this anymore. I could just try an MS diet instead. I really shudder when I see people write that, and you have every right to feel that way and want to just stop what you're on. I don't want chemicals, I don't want toxins, I just want healthy. And that's fine. You want to do that, do that. But think so carefully before you do. And I guess somebody like Matthew Embry might think that I'm scaremongering or not. I honestly am not. I'm just trying to sit on the fence and look at it from both sides. And I know on my own merit and my own understanding that I wouldn't have survived if I had just ate healthy. It just wouldn't have. And yes, I said at the beginning of the video, I ate nothing but sugar prior to MS, and I still do. I'm bad for it, but I was really bad. And that probably did have some kind of contributing factor. But diet alone wouldn't have saved me. And that's why I would really urge anyone considering coming off a disease-modifying drug to just switch to healthy eating, to think so carefully before making that decision. And it's up to you, it's your decision, and it's what you read and what you feel, but make sure you're getting your information from real sources. Don't just read conspiracy theories. I mean, I found myself watching Matthew Embry, the MS Hope guy. I found myself watching his documentary, and I got off the phone and immediately I called my partner and I was like, that's it. I'm stopping sugar, no more dairy, no more nothing, no more this, no more that, because it's all about healthy. And I thought, it is, he's right. These things should drive us to eat better and to feel better, but not in place of my disease-modifying drugs. And unfortunately, in his documentary, he did reel off all the side effects of the drugs that we all tend to take, the baclofen, the gabapentin, pregabalin. He reeled off all the side effects of these things and the side effects of these disease-modifying drugs that a lot of us take. And he got teary and emotional, like, why would anybody want to take that with those side effects? I don't experience side effects with any of my drugs. I mean, I maybe did in the beginning because it took a while for my body to adjust to taking them. But, my disease-modifying drug, other than a little bit of fatigue on the day or after the day of my infusion, I'm fine afterwards. So there's a lot of scaremongering on the MS diet side of the warfare, if you want to call it that. When in actual fact, I think we should be working together. And with my particular drug, I am Tysabri, or natalizumab as it's called. It's branded as a high efficacy but moderate risk clinical drug. And a lot of these disease modifying drugs are. They work really well. High efficacy, work really well. Moderate risk means there's quite a risk there. And unfortunately, you know, the JC virus, the John Cunningham virus, and the risk of developing PML, which is a severe and oftentimes fatal brain disease, is a real risk from taking my drip. So, people like Matthew would look at that and go, well, why would you want to do that when you could just change your diet? Some people can just change their diet, but if you've had MS so bad that you needed to be put forward for a disease-modifying drug, then there's a reason for that. So it's just something to think about, and just use your own kind of intuition, and just be careful about the sources that you go to for these things, because conspiracy theories are not the right thing to look at. It's good to be informed, and it's good to not be an idiot. But really look at the sources that you're reading, and look at who the writers are and what is their background. It's really easy to get caught up in the mass hype and hysteria of Big Pharma being, the evil giant, which they kind of are. But at the end of the day, they saved my life. There's no amount of bananas that could help me with that. So I will have no doubt rocked the boat for some people who are really pro MS diet, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. If anything helps, why not? I'll have also rocked the boat for people who hate Big Pharma, but I'm hoping that I've made people a bit more open-minded and a bit more objective about their decisions when it comes to drugs versus diet. To be honest, I believe it's a combination of both. And some people may say that's a cop-out, but that's the way I look at it. You have to go with your gut. Read all the material you get. I'd be really interested to hear about both experiences. If you've managed to change your diet and you've maybe had aggressive MS and it's worked for you, then great. Any of your personal experiences I would love to hear about, because I'm open-minded too. I know where I stand, but it would be great to hear about your experiences. So please get in contact, leave a comment below about your experience, because others look at the comments too, and let me know. And I hope this was somewhat helpful. And I will see you on another video of making sense of multiple sclerosis. Bye.